So in my life, what that upbringing did was it made me really curious and insatiable to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I saw opportunity everywhere. So how do you actually find your big idea? It becomes a little bit overwhelming. So I experimented with half a dozen businesses as a student. Then I became a management consultant to see how big companies work. I did my MBA, my CFA. I started running an idea pipeline for a bank. And eventually I took over their high-end business unit in Canada, and I grew them $1 billion portfolio. And that sounds exciting, and me and my team were quite excited, but the problem is I couldn't help but think that there was a different path for me. I couldn't help but imagine finding my 12-year-old self and saying, guess what? You grew up to be a banker. It's not the dream that I had. So I actually wrote a book on chaos, started studying it more in depth, and then I created a website where people from around the world could come to share business ideas. But pretty soon there were a ton of us, insatiably curious people looking for inspiration. And after publishing 250,000 ideas and having a couple billion page views, it's become really clear that this is an ultimate platform for figuring out more predictively what people actually want. What are the sort of next consumer trends? So that attracted a lot of different brands who we started pairing up with advisors, and pretty soon it exploded, and we're working with hundreds of different companies from fashion to healthcare to science. And the interesting thing we've learned is that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, there are certain patterns of opportunity that tend to cross over all industries. Innovation is like a splash in water, and that splash creates ripples of opportunity. As an example, if you were looking at Facebook, well, that's exciting, but even in 2007, they had 50 million users already. How do you take Facebook on? It's too late. Google couldn't do it. How could anyone else? But if you broke Facebook down into its parts, you would see hundreds of opportunities it created. In 2007, Facebook was basically a site for friends to archive photos of their everyday life. So just one pattern would be divergence, the one we started with. What's the opposite of those three things? Well, if Facebook's just for friends, what about a site that's not just for friends? That's Twitter. That's later. If people are archiving all of their photos, what if I don't want people to see my party photos forever? Well, what's less permanent? Snapchat, $4 billion company, years later. And if people are sharing their everyday photos, well, now the world is flooded with generic photography. How do you bring the art of photography back? Well, that's Instagram, $1 billion, again, years later. Divergence is actually one of 6 patterns that I'm going to talk to you about today. And when I do, what's going to become clear is that chaos creates predictable opportunity. And I'm going to give you this tale with the tale of Dietrich. Now, Dietrich was a guy who loved having fun. He loved having fun so much it took him a whole decade to finish university. He picked marketing because that's where the party was at. But fast forward in time, and it seemed like Dietrich, when he looked at where his life had gone, was actually a marketer selling toothpaste. So he needed to figure out, what are the other ideas out there? What is his actual calling? And it seemed that in Thailand, the exciting thing to do was to rock it up, to have a good time. And if you did that, you started noticing the cab drivers, well, they were addicted to a little something called krating dang. And that's what helped them drive through the night. In his case, that's what helped him perk up for that next day meeting. So he decided to bottle that up, to sell it, to make this a product. So he quit his job, he took all his savings, and he and a buddy, well, they had a focus group. And they started figuring out the potential of this product. And at the focus group, they learned it tastes awful. It's horrible. Why would you quit your job for this? This tastes really bad. This is a bad idea. Run away from it. But they already started. So what do you do when your product's, well, something that tastes awful? Well, I guess if everybody else has a big can, you need to have a small can. If everybody else charges $1, well, you need to charge $3. Then it seems like a premium product at least. And if everybody else has multiple SKUs, you will have just one. And if everyone else has a legal and compliance team and they're not allowed to sponsor cool stuff, well, you will. Let's just hope that parachute opens. $6 billion later, it appears that opposing the mainstream does indeed seem to fuel your success. Now, I could end the Red Bull story there. You've learned a little something already, but I was thinking if you want, I could tell you the secret reclusive tale of Red Bull, the one that goes back a bit earlier. But it's a reclusive company. Like, this is a secret. You'd have to work for it. Do you know the secret backstory? Yeah. You want to know Red Bull's history? Well, here's how it goes. I managed to have a beer or two with a man named Hans Vrains. Hans was number 3 at Red Bull, and he was put in charge of expanding globally. So he got into his new job, and he said, hey, what's our global expansion budget? What's the marketing budget? And they said, oh, it's $2.5 million for a global product. Okay, all right. Well, at least how did the focus groups come back? They said it tastes awful. All right. Is there anything else I should know of? Yeah, there's one more thing. There's this little PR nightmare maybe you can help us with. It's that people around the world, there's a rumor going on that Red Bull comes from a bull testicle. So we need you to try and stop that, okay? Or do we? So Red Bull decided the actual plan was, you know what, let's put up a website, an unmoderated forum where people can share ideas. Legal disclosure, we're not looking at it. Pretty soon everybody assumed that Red Bull was actually from a bull testicle, and each time they'd expand to a new country, they would go to the local version of the FDA and say, oh, by the way, it's actually like half a cup of coffee. It's not from a bull testicle. They'd be allowed in, but there'd be a media uproar, and pretty soon they'd have another successful launch. That was working well until one day there was a drunk driving accident, and the people who had had a lot of drinks also had some Red Bull vodka. So Red Bull was pulled into the courts, and they had to have a defense. So they came up with a perfect defense. They said, okay, we will pull our product from the shelves as long as we agree to pull everything else people mix their 100 vodkas with. So if you could just tell Coca-Cola, then we'll follow suit, and we'll be good. Okay, well, we can't do that. While we're figuring this out, would you agree to put a warning label on the can? Yes! We'd agree to a warning label? That's fantastic! What a great idea! Wait, what should the warning label say? Not for teenagers! Yes! We'll do pretty much at anything. What else? Not for pregnant women. Tangible proof it works. I like how you're thinking. Anything else while we're at it? Yeah, please put on the label, don't mix with vodka! Yeah, the recipe's on the can! Now, what is really interesting about Red Bull is that Red Bull's not supposed to win. It's not supposed to beat the 2 Fortune 500s that rock at the world of marketing. And if you think Coke and Pepsi don't understand millennials or marketing, you're mistaken. Coke and Pepsi have a marketing budget of $5.5 billion. That's the size of Monaco's entire economy and about 43 other countries. In comparison, Red Bull's launch budget was enough to buy that house in Palo Alto. Red Bull's not supposed to win. But you see, Coke and Pepsi, like other Fortune 500s, they have rules, policies, structure, brand standards. Because of that, they're actually predictable. And in a time period of chaos and change, if you're divergent, well, that's a pretty quick way to success. Your big idea, your breakthrough is so much closer than you think. It's close within your grasp. But what you need to remember is that your success actually blocks you from finding opportunity. So, more than anything, be curious, be insatiable, be willing to destroy, and you will be better and faster.
Which pattern do you want to learn next? Acceleration explored through the business of extreme adventure. Convergence taught using an ex-criminal entrepreneur. Divergence further explained by the business of ugly. Reduction exemplified by an empire built off heartbreak. Circularity revealed through business lessons from a giant sea turtle's migration patterns. Redirection demystified using shock lessons about turning chaos into opportunity. Visit betterandfaster.com to continue.